everything is closed, you cannot get out anymore. And then you get this nice tension in your stomach. So this is the biggest fear of astronauts, that you cannot fly. So just to have the feeling that there was some green, some nature on board. You don't get cargo ships, so you don't have new food. So the food has to stay good for a year. I could look into the universe and see the endless blackness of space. It was not scared because of that. I wanted this since I was 12 years old. So when I was launched the first time, it was a dream for already 33 years. My family and relatives and friends, and they could see me. So that was a beautiful moment always. The Sunday was always very nice.
André Bey, hoş geldiniz. Sadece kendi merak ettiklerimi soruyorum. Aslında ne iş yapıyorsunuz?
The job of an astronaut is actually to be the hands and the eyes of the people on the ground, of the scientists and the engineers. So we get our tasks to perform experiments, repairs, cleaning, docking other spacecraft. So it's really part of a team. And that's, the major task for an astronaut, to do the job for the people on the ground.
Peki bunun bir eğitimi mi var? Çok uzun yıllar süren?
If you are selected as an astronaut, you get, after a while, you get first training to learn about space. What does the NASA do? What does the European Space Agency, ESA, do? You learn about space in general. Then you learn about the spacecraft. How do you control, for example, the Soyuz spacecraft? How does the International Space Station work? So, general. And then when you get assigned to a flight, you also start to learn what you're really going to do up there. What kind of experiment, what kind of repair you have to do, how to operate the robotic arm for a certain task. So this is about 3 to 4 years for every flight. Also, when I got assigned to my second flight, I had to do a lot of new things, new experiments, new tasks, and repeat things that you maybe have forgotten. So it's about 3 years that you have to train for a flight.
Peki mesela diyelim ki uçuş emri gelmedi. Hayatınızı nasıl sürdürüyorsunuz? Size NASA bir maaş mı veriyor yoksa başka bir iş mi yapıyorsunuz?
Astronauts are just a member of the space agency. I'm a staff member. Like the engineers, like the doctors, like the managers. I don't get paid more even than the others. You get a salary like the other engineers get. You're just part of a team. Actually, before I became an astronaut, I was already working for the European Space Agency as a medical doctor to coordinate experiments. So you're a staff member. That's how you get paid. You do the job like all the others.
Evli misiniz?
Yes.
Çocuk?
Yes, 4 children.
Avrupa'da en uzun uzayda kalan astronotun siz olduğunuzu okudum.
Well, I was. Actually, on my second flight, I was supposed to go for 5 months. But then something went wrong on the ground with the next capsule. And I had to stay 6 weeks longer. And then it turned out that I had the record for the longest single flight in Europe. But in the meantime, I have an Italian colleague that went a bit longer. So I have to go back to get the record back.
André Bey, ürkmüyor musunuz? Şimdi bir bilinmeze, ilk yolculuğunuzda bir bilinmeze gidiyorsunuz. Hiç bilmediğiniz bir yer, hiç bilmediğiniz bir iş, hiç bilmediğiniz bir deneyim. İnsan hani bir anksiyete olmuyor mu? Efendim korkmuyor mu? Ya başıma bir şey gelirse, ya geri dönemezsem?
Well, of course, there is some risk involved, but it's not unique. If you're a fireman or the police or military, there's also risk involved. We know very well what can go wrong, and we get a lot of training for that. So you know what to do. If there is a leak, You know if there's a fire, so how to solve problems. Most of the training is to learn how to solve problems. Now, all the aspects of spaceflight you trained before. We go into the centrifuges. We simulate the launch and the flight. So you know all the different parts of the flight already. And for a launch, it all comes together. It is exciting. It's like going into a roller coaster. You want it very much, otherwise you're not standing in a line for 2 hours to get into a roller coaster. You know that it's pretty safe, otherwise the roller coaster would not be in an amusement park. But you don't know what you're going to feel. So you sit in there, everything is closed, you cannot get out anymore, and then you get this nice tension in your stomach. So you want it, but it's still exciting. So that is what you feel. It's not fear, it's more excitement. And you need trust. You need trust that things go well. But we do this every day. We trust that the building is okay here, that the roof will not collapse. We trust that somebody checked our car, that the brakes are working. If you get into a plane, you trust other people. And that's what we do in space as well. So a lot of professional people that look for the safety and the quality. So as an astronaut, actually my biggest fear was that somebody would say, it's cancelled, or you're medically disqualified. So this is the biggest fear of astronauts, that you cannot fly. But once in space, no fear.
Orada çok uzun da yalnız kalıyorsunuz aslında. Mesela bu yalnızlık insanı korkutmuyor mu? Mesela yanınıza kitap mı götürüyorsunuz? Ne oluyor yani? Çünkü uzun bir yalnızlık süreci o.
Actually, it was my first flight was 11 days, which were the normal flights. Also, for example, of the space shuttle, 1 week, 2 weeks. But then you just get used to it, and then you have to go back. So I wanted to go along. So nowadays, most flights are half a year, and some even for a year. And you're not really isolated up there. You constantly, well, first of all, you are with other astronauts from America, from Russia, colleagues, Japan, etc. But second, you have a lot of contact with the ground stations. So constantly you hear people talk with Moscow, or with Houston, or with Tsukuba in Japan, or with Munich in Germany. So there's a lot of communication going on. And you are part of the ground team. So you put cameras on so people can watch also what you're doing, for example. And even with the family, there is a lot of contact, in the sense that if we have contact with the communication satellites, we can call home. And on Sunday, we even have two-sided video contact. So for 20 minutes, I could see my family and relatives and friends, and they could see me. So that was a beautiful moment always. So Sunday was always very nice. So you're not isolated. It's true, you cannot go out to the beach, go for a long walk in the forest. That is true. That is something you start to miss. So there's no nature on board. It's all plastic, metal, machines. And my Russian colleague on board, he sent me a file with bird sounds, just to listen to birds on board. And my American colleague, he took the plastic strips, green plastic strips of the food packages, put them all together, and it was like a forest, like a kelp forest, like an underwater cave with plants in there. So just to have the feeling that there was some green, some nature on board.
Yanınızda yemek de götürüyorsunuz değil mi André Bey?
Of course, yes. Yeah.
Ama herhalde bir sınırlı şeyler değil mi?
Well, the food is very special because everything floats. So also food. So you cannot have food that creates crumbs, you know, a little biscuit. It would be a cloud of little crumbs. Same with droplets. fluids. So you don't want that. The liquid drops everywhere. So everything is a bit sticky. So the food, well, what we want from food? Good taste, good smell, good feeling in your mouth, healthy, and it has to stay good for at least a year. If there's no new food coming because a rocket explodes on the ground, sometimes that happens, you don't get cargo ships, so you don't have new food. So the food has to stay good for a year. But they do a great job. So we have several laboratories in America, in Russia, but also in Europe that make space food with all the right ingredients. And actually it tastes well. You have to get used a bit to the fact that it's in a pouch. You have to put water in it, for example. But it's very nice. It's a social event as well, food. Because you can be working very hard in space. We have long hours, long days. And then it's nice to see your colleagues as well. It might be that you're working for a whole day in your module, in your lab. So it's nice to come together in the evenings with your colleagues, sometimes in the Russian segment, sometimes in the American part, and we eat together. So food is a social aspect, to come together. And sometimes the food is part of an experiment. So they want to see, for example, how your bones react to salt in the food. So that means that you have to eat a certain amount of food with so much salt in it. And a few weeks later, food without salt, and see how the body reacts. So the food can also be part of an experiment. So the food is an interesting topic in space. And it tastes good, actually.
Aynı anda kaç astronot gidiyor? Değişiyor muhtemelen değil mi? 2, 3, 5.
For a long time, we had only the Russian Soyuz spacecraft to go up. And in there were 3 people. So you go up with 3, but on board there's already 3 there. So then you're 6. And then the first 3 go back, and then you're 3 again until the next one crew. So it's 3 or 6, but nowadays, 1-2 years now, we have a new spacecraft, the Dragon from the company SpaceX. And they have 4 people on board. So at the moment there are 7 people. So it differs a bit, 6, 7. But there's room enough. The space station is very big. The interior is about 1,000 cubic meters. It's like a big aeroplane. So we have room enough.
Çok sınırlı sayıda insan olduğu için diyelim ki astronotlardan bir tanesini sinir oluyorsunuz, anlaşamıyorsunuz. Çok da büyük dert değil mi bu? Çünkü çok sınırlı bir alan, hep karşılaşacaksınız, geçinemiyorsunuz. Hani karınız olsa boşarsınız, öyle bir durumda yok yani.
Well, that might happen. Of course, people are different. Astronauts are just humans. So you might have a clash of characters. That is a possibility. On the ground, they look at the different people when they make a crew. You don't want 2 captains on a ship, for example. So they look a bit who can work together. On top of that, astronauts are selected from a big group of applicants. In Europe, for example, now this was 23,000 candidates for 6 new jobs. So you also in the selection you look for the character of people. An astronaut should be a team player. You have to work with different disciplines. One moment you talk with a Japanese professor, and the next day you talk with a Russian technician, different cultures, different scientific disciplines. So it's important that an astronaut is a team player, that you're not very aggressive, that you're not very to yourself and isolated. So you need to be social. So they look at that. So the astronauts, they train for a long time together also. So you know the others. You know the families. You know how they react, what their emotions are. So once you go up, it's already a small family. You know the problems of everybody. So on board, we don't see much problems. It can happen that people don't get along. In the past, these things happened in the Skylab, in the American space station on the 70s. There were some frictions, also on the Russian side, but luckily nothing serious. So most of the time, it's great. You have nice colleagues. And we have our own cabins. So you're able to withdraw yourself to your own cabin and talk to your family or watch a movie. So you're not always together in a small place. So it was nice. I would love to go back for that. Also for the friendship.
André Bey, insandaki his ne oluyor oraya gittiğinde? Uçsuz bucaksız bir yerdeyim, yer çekimi yok. Ne hissediyorsunuz? Huzur, gerginlik, mutluluk, ne hissettiğiniz şey ne? Korku belki. Ha ben olsam korkardım herhalde muhtemelen de.
I wanted this since I was 12 years old. So when I was launched the first time, it was a dream for already 33 years. And so I wanted to go to that special place. I wanted to be weightless, float around. I wanted to see a beautiful Earth, the blackness of space. And for me, it was not scary. I could look into the universe and see the endless blackness of space. It was not scared because of that. I wasn't scared about something happening on board. I was trained for it. I know the dangers. If there's a leak, I knew what to do. If there's a fire, you know what to do. So there was no fear. And on top of it, it's work. I was very much aware that a lot of time and energy and money has been put in all these experiments. So you feel very responsible. You're afraid to make a mistake because that would ruin something. So you're very concentrated. And so it's in that sense, it's a bit stressful because you want to do a good job. Everybody's watching you also. So you have to get used to that. Of course, you have your free time. And one of the nicest things is to look out of the windows to the Earth. And there I got some special feelings. Two, actually. One was a bit claustrophobic, because you see this planet, not for myself. There was no claustrophobia for myself. But if you look at the planet, if you look straight at the planet, it's beautiful. You see fantastic colors on the Bahamas, turquoise waters. You see the red deserts of Australia, beautiful. But as soon as you look beside it, you see the blackness of space. And then it feels like the Earth is shrinking, that it becomes a sphere, a very fragile cell with a very thin membrane around it. And all of a sudden you think, wow, this is it. This is everything. Space is very hostile. It's empty, cold, radiation. So it feels like a baby, unprotected, very vulnerable. So that's one feeling I got from, we have to be careful. This is it. You cannot just go away and go to another planet. And the second one, if you look into the universe, then I got some kind of cosmic feeling. Somebody who's religious would call it a religious feeling. Because I know that I live on a sphere. But if I look outside, the Earth is flat and the air is endless. But in orbit around the Earth, you all of a sudden you see what you know. That you go around the sphere, you see Mars coming up and Venus, the moon, and you go under the moon because you turn around the Earth and the sun. We had a comet during our flight. So all of a sudden you see that you're part of a solar system, that you're part of something much bigger, part of a universe. And that was a special feeling. So that, wow, there's much more than my little world around me on Earth. So that was very special. So you get worried about the planet and you feel that you're part of something much bigger. And that's special. Not all the time. Most of the time you're working. You're working very hard to do a good job.
André Bey, döndüğünüzde bir süre karantina gibi bir yerde mi kalıyorsunuz? Hani uzaydan dünyaya hastalık taşıma ihtimaline karşı, bir şeye karşı.
Well, actually, a lot of people now with the virus going around in the world, with the pandemic, we know about isolation and quarantine. For astronauts, this is already happening before because we get tested a lot before our flight, medical tests to see if we are healthy enough to go to space. So a lot of testing. Then, before you get launched, we go to Baikonur in Kazakhstan. And there we get in quarantine for 2 weeks. So people that want to work with us, they have to be tested, see if they're not sick. We have press conferences, but behind glass, people wearing masks. So for our astronauts, nothing changed actually in that sense. So we see a lot of people with masks around us. So to prevent that we catch a virus just before we go to the space station. And actually, when you come back, we have a similar situation. Because of the fact that our body is reacting to the space flight in the sense that it's more stress, you have the weightless conditions working on the body. So the immune system of the astronauts is a bit hampered. So there's more risk that we might get sick when we come back. So after flight, we're also in some kind of quarantine situation to protect us, that we can recover, that we can adapt again to Earth. So for astronauts, quarantine before and after flight is a normal thing. Masks are a normal thing. And isolation as well. For half a year, you're isolated in your space station. So, but the big difference, we choose for it. And the people on Earth don't choose for it. And then it's another story, of course.
Kaç yıldır bu süreçtesiniz, bu proseste?
Well, depends on where I start. I think it starts when I was 12, when I got science fiction books from my grandmother. And then I was hooked.
Ama o hayal André Bey, o sayılmaz.
Yes, that's the dream part. So the selection is a real start. You want to become an astronaut, so you start the selection process. This is already long. It's 1-2 years. You're still not sure if you get selected. And every time you expect a phone call that you're out. Then once you're selected, it's not that you get into a rocket the next day. So then you get this whole process of training, basic training, training on the space systems, and then finally an assignment. So there are astronauts that waited 14 years for their first flight. Now, waiting is a big word because you do all kinds of things. You have collateral duties. Astronauts that are not preparing for a flight, they work as the other team members for the agency, for the space agency, and you have all kinds of technical tasks or outreach, so all kinds of different things. So some astronauts were preparing for 14 years because sometimes an accident happened and everything is closed down for 3 years before people fly again. So that happens. Things change. So other people, they fly pretty soon, but then they have to wait for 10 years. It also depends if you're an American or a Russian. For me, I was selected in well, actually the selection started in 1990. That was when I read the first advertisement. Finally, I got selected in 98. So the first time I was not selected. And then later on I was selected in 1998. then before I was assigned, it was 2001 or something. And I flew in 2004. Then I had to wait another, 8 years or something before my second flight. So it's a long period.
30 yıldan fazla.
Oh yeah, the first flight was, when I launched the first time, I was dreaming of that for 33 years. And in total, the period that I was an astronaut is about 20 years or something.
Uzayda başınıza gelen en kötü şey neydi?
The worst thing, well, you get space sick. Most of the astronauts get space sick. So it's like seasickness, motion sickness. You get into space, everything feels strange, you're nauseated. So you have to get used to that, like space sickness. You know that it's coming, so it's not a surprise. Take it easy. There are pills for that. And after a while you feel good. Actually, you get sick again when you come back to Earth, because then you have to readapt to Earth again. So you get Earth sick afterwards. That's one thing. So in the beginning you don't feel too good. You have the feeling that you have a full face, because like we're sitting here, there's a lot of blood in the lower part of our body. But in space, you get a redistribution of the blood. So there's much more blood in your head, for example. So that feels like you have a cold. So it doesn't feel nice. You're a bit sick, and you have back pain, because you get taller in space. Like you sit here, but your weight pushes the discs between your bones in the back. But in space, there is no weight. So you get a bit taller, centimeters, and that feels strange in your back. So the first days in space are not so pleasant. So, but then you get adapted and you feel great. On board, I had a great time. What was not nice is the big brother feeling. What surprised me, actually, there's cameras everywhere. So everything you do, people on the ground look at you. So you have to get used to that. So in the evening, the cameras go off, so we have our own privacy in space. That is something you have to get used to. And luckily, we did not have any disasters on board. We had some alarms. So in the middle of the night, there was an alarm, and then you wake up, and then first you think, is there a fire or is there a leak? So if there is an emergency, you have to act quickly. It was a warning, and it turned out that you had a short circuit. Something happened with the electronics of the solar panels, and all of a sudden we had a lot less power. So then you have to act and get the things running again, and so sometimes you have to use your training. But it was more interesting than scary. So luckily that was not so bad. And the worst thing that happened in the end was a mistake that I made. People make mistakes, and I had to do an experiment that I did before. I was, routine. It was a routine because I was already long in space. I knew what to do, but the risk is if you're having a routine, there's a risk that you get sloppy, that you make mistakes, that you don't pay attention anymore. And the experiment I did, I didn't pay attention, and a gas hose got stuck and broke off. And so I thought, this is an experiment that I did for a scientist that I knew already for 25 years, and I ruined this experiment. At that moment, then you feel, this was stupid. Luckily, I could repair it and fix it. But that was the moment that I thought, this is bad. This is the nightmare of an astronaut, that you make a mistake that ruins an experiment. So these are the worst times for astronauts, yes. But luckily I could repair it and we could repeat the experiment later.
Aslında herkesin beklediği soruyu şimdi sorayım André Bey. Sizce uzayda hayat var mı? Başka bir hayat?
Other type of life than us? I think yes. Why? Because we don't have proof yet, but imagine we have our star, the sun. Has 9 planets, 8 planets, 9, a lot of stuff around it. We know now that all the other stars have planets as well, the exoplanets. Also planets that look like Earth, where we could have liquid water, for example. So our star is one of 200, 300 billion in our Milky Way. And then it turns out that we have about 100 billion other Milky Ways. So 100 billion times 300 billion, that's a number with 23 and some say 24 digits. Huge amount. There are more stars in the universe than sand grains on all the beaches of planet Earth. And even more planets, because all these stars have planets around them. The ingredients of life we can find everywhere. You can measure water everywhere. You can measure complex molecules everywhere that make life. So I think it's a matter of time before we find proof of biological, biochemistry processes in other places. We look close by, for example, on Mars, because Mars is, well, there was probably water on Mars in the past, and we're now looking if there is still life or remnants of life. We are interested in some of the moons of the big planets, moons from Jupiter and Saturn, because under that ice is hot water. We know that. So this is a place where life might have been developed. That's already in our own solar system. And even more interesting are the exoplanets that I just mentioned. We now have very good telescopes, and recently the James Webb Space Telescope was launched, which is able to analyze the atmosphere of these exoplanets. And we can try to find if there are signals in there, molecules that are indication for life. I really look forward to the first results. So we don't have proof yet, but I think most scientists think that there must be more life in the universe. I'm not talking about intelligent life yet. This is another story. We listen with big radio telescopes to see if we can get strange signals. So far, no result, but there are also so many stars. So from a statistic point of view, and with the fact that ingredients and possibilities are everywhere, I expect there is more life in the universe. But no proof yet. And that's science, you have to prove it first. So let's hope.
André Bey, çok gergin ortamlarda insanların aklına gelmeyen bir şey vardır. Atıyorum askere gittiğinizde libidonuz düşer. Mesela uzayda da böyle mi? Bir cinselliğe ihtiyaç hissediyor mu insan? Yoksa hayır, o libido tamamen ölen bir şey haline mi geliyor uzayda?
Well, this is a private thing. So this is not an experiment. We cannot have these kind of experiments in space. We have ethical committees, so it will not get through as an experiment. So this is a private thing that people can do in their own private time, in their own private space. So it's an interesting topic, of course, because in the far future people will travel far to Mars, etc. It's a normal thing. It's a human thing, but it's a private thing. So it's not something official. It's not something to share with other people. But of course, it's a possibility. Related to that is something else, and that's of course what happens with, for example, if with a pregnancy with embryos, and that's of course very important. We did tests already with animals, with frogs, with toads, and you see strange things happen there. So it might be dangerous for a new life to develop in weightless conditions. So we will never do that with humans. That will be not ethical. So, but with animals, we see interesting things happening there. So for the far future, this might be a serious topic, or what happens with the development of humans. But that's the next step already.
Ama anladığım kadarıyla insanın aklına bile gelmeyen bir şey haline dönüyor cinsellik.
If people are up there for half a year, it's a normal thing. So people will think of it for sure. Yeah, but like I said, it's a private thing. What the astronauts want to do in a private place, in a private time, then it's up to them. There is no rules for that. There's no rules for that. It's like on Earth. It's everybody does what he wants in his private time.
Doğal olarak. Ne umuyorsunuz? Şunu soruyorum. Bundan 20 yıl sonra, 25 yıl sonra daha uzak bir gezegene gitmek mi? Efendim Mars'ta hayatın olduğunu ispat etmek mi? Ne bekliyorsunuz bütün bu yolculuktan?
Spaceflight is, well, it's developing fast at the moment. And that's because there are now commercial companies involved and a lot more countries. For example, China, India, the United Arab Emirates are active. So there's a lot more countries getting into space and also private companies. We've seen that now with, for example, SpaceX developing another rocket and capsule to bring people to the space station. Same thing for Boeing. It's also going to launch a new capsule with people. So China is doing that. So you see interesting developments. The agencies, the governments, they take the risk first. But if something works, you can leave it to commercial companies. They do it more efficient. There's competition. And you see that now happening as well. SpaceX is doing a very interesting job. That also means that it's not only professional anymore, but it's also like tourism. So we'll see that happen now. So in the next years, we will see more and more people paying for their space flight. We will see developments in the form of space hotels in orbit. Of course, things will go wrong, like with shipping, like with aviation. An accident will happen, and then we find out what's wrong, and then we continue. We do the same thing with if there's a plane crash, etc. So that will happen in space as well. So more and more people will go to space. The agencies will focus more on exploration, going back to the moon, to do further research on the moon, to prepare for Mars. The moon is only 3 days away and Mars 9 months. So it's better to prepare and learn things on the moon, maybe even make fuel on the moon, because we found water on the south pole of the moon. Water you can use and split in hydrogen and oxygen. You have a rocket. So then we might use the moon for even for minerals, for mining or energy. So this sounds like science fiction, but we're going that direction. We will use space for the benefit of Earth in the form of precious metals, energy. This will happen in the future. We will go on to Mars because we are interested if there's life, etc. So slowly humans will spread into the universe, and more countries will be involved. More and more civilians will be involved. So it will be a part of humans. Like on Earth, we conquered the deserts, the mountains, the oceans, the polar areas, even the air, and now space is the next frontier. And my hope is that we do it all together, that we go to Mars as the planet, as humankind. So people from all kind of countries and cultures, etc., and backgrounds, that would be great. That's a bit utopic, a bit optimistic, I think. But there is already a small race going on. Who is first on the moon? Will it be the Americans with the Europeans, the Japanese, Canadians, or will it be China all of a sudden? So this is interesting, and it's good competition that stimulates people as well. So it will be a combination, I hope, of competition and cooperation. And of course, we should do this all for the benefit of the planet. So I hope we can keep space free from military things. And a very important one, that we can do it as clean as possible. It's not good if we destroy, for example, the environment and the atmosphere for the fun of very rich people. So we have to be careful that we can do it as clean as possible. But then I think it's a good development. And a lot of people might go to space in the near future.
Bizim Maliye Bakanımız da uzaya gitmek istiyormuş. Lütfen yanınızda giderken götürüverin bari.
Well, that might indeed happen. We had in the United States several politicians that that went to space. So who knows? Actually, I think that a big country like Turkey, so many inhabitants, already busy with communication satellites, etc. It would be a normal development if we also see Turkish astronauts, maybe together with the Russians or a part of the European Space Agency. Let's see. It would be an interesting development. The more knowledge we can get, the better.
Geldiğiniz için çok teşekkür ederim. Benim için de çok ilginç bir deneyimdi açıkçası. Çünkü bilmediğim bir dünyaya gittim, geri geldim. Tekrar çok teşekkür ederim.
It's an interesting world, and it's very nice to share and to stimulate people and get more people enthusiastic for space. That would be great. So I hope to see Turkey being very active in space as well.